And now I'm going to do that a second time so it can be recorded, but I do call the July 5th Planning Commission meeting to order. If you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now I will, for our viewing public, I will introduce the people who are attending our meeting today. I will do it off of the Zoom screen. Although some of us are here in person, we are all on Zoom for the benefit of the recording. The first person I see who is stretching his neck out is Jim Fisk, who is the city's long-term planner. The next person I see on my screen is myself. I'm Beck Ashby, Vice Chair. I see Tyler McCloskey sitting next to me. He is a Planning Commission member. Jacob Miller is with us, and he is with the city's Community Development Department. Joe Morrison is a Planning Commission member. Phil King is a Planning Commission member, and Josie Rademacher is with the Community Development Department. With that, I welcome all of you, and I am pleased we're all here, and we will continue. If our chair is able to make contact with us, we will turn the meeting over to her. I am seeing no one in the lobby for citizen comments. Is there anyone on Zoom that is desiring to make comments to the Planning Commission this evening? Josie, is there anyone in our audience at all? No. Okay. In that case, I will close the citizens comment period. So we now have approval of the June 7th minutes. Josie, did you send out a revised minutes to the Planning Commission?
No, but it has been revised.
Okay. What I will say is from the minutes that were presented to you in your packet, one revision was made under business item 5A. After the first paragraph, we inserted the comment that the public hearing was opened. That statement had been omitted, and so we inserted that. So with that, we will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
I motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to second that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Phil. So there is a motion and a second to approve the minutes as corrected. Is there anyone who would desire to vote against the motion? I will ask a second time. Is there anyone who desires to vote against the motion? Hearing none, the motion passes with unanimous consent. And we will move now to our business items. The first business item is a public hearing regarding Port Orchard Municipal Code 20.68 accessory dwelling units. And I will ask Mr. Fisk to give us a presentation before we open or a staff report before we open the public hearing.
Good evening, Jim Fisk, Senior Planner for the City of Port Orchard. As you may recall, staff introduced proposed revisions to Port Orchard Municipal Code 20.68 and 20.38.235 associated with accessory dwelling units at the March Planning Commission meeting. Since that meeting, the staff provided the draft regulations to the Department of Commerce, advertised for tonight's public hearing consistent with procedures outlined in the municipal code, and the City of Port Orchard SEPA responsible official issued a determination of non-significance. The Department of Community Development did not receive any comments regarding the proposed amendments associated and as advertised. This revision is intended to remove any owner occupancy requirements associated with accessory dwelling units, consistent with the guidance outlined in House Bill 1220, which related to supporting emergency shelters and housing through local planning and development. The state encourages local governments to consider policies encouraging the construction of ADUs as a mechanism to meet affordable housing goals. The city has determined that an owner occupancy requirement for ADUs creates a potential barrier to ADU construction. The proposed revisions repeal language referring to owner occupancy from 20.68 and deletes an exception to owner occupancy requirement for ADUs in 20.38.235, which is the McCormick Village Overlay District. It's important to note while drafting the overlay district regulations, the city recognized that an owner occupancy requirement may prevent the creation of ADUs and intentionally creating a specific exception to that requirement. The proposed revisions tonight apply the same reasoning and if adopted would apply citywide. Tonight, we ask the Planning Commission to take public testimony and consider the draft red line version, the red line version, which staff provided in the commission's packet, and provide a recommendation to the City Council. Staff is available for any questions regarding the proposed amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Fisk. I will now open the public hearing for the accessory dwelling unit owner occupancy issue. Is there anyone who would like to make public testimony for the public hearing? I'm not seeing anyone.
Can I?
In the building, is there anyone online on Zoom who would in the audience to provide? Joe?
Thank you, Chair. I have to ask this question. So it's my understanding this is a fully valid meeting, but the public didn't get the opportunity to attend because the meeting ID was wrong in the packet. So what I'm struggling with is a bit, if we're going to have hybrid meetings, right now the public, I believe, cannot attend this meeting.
Okay, no,
digitally.
I'm just going to ask Josie a question because although the ID may have been wrong on our packet, was it wrong on the city website?
That I'm not.
Because I don't know that the public would necessarily have access to our packet. I would think they would go to our website for the link.
The packet is on the website.
It is on the website. Okay.
And that, to my understanding, that's how you join the meeting. But if there's a different link, and I just want us to be aware of this, right? Like if the public can't access this digitally, we can talk, but we might want to delay action until next meeting.
I've not tried the public link, so I couldn't say if it was wrong or not.
And by the way, I deal with this a lot in my job too. It happens. It's very common. These things happen all the time. It's very easy.
So the link does take you to the packet, and the link to use is the one from the packet, which is expired.
So that means, right, the link's expired. So theoretically, if a member of the public wanted to attend this meeting, they could.
Not be able to. So that's the next one. Thank you.
I mean, is that correct, Josie?
They could be here in person, but if their intention was to provide public testimony via Zoom, they could not join.
Okay, so I just want us to be aware of that. And, I think we can discuss it, but we just might want to wait for public testimony next session. That's a thought, because the public can't access this digitally. Right? You can't, we can't have it.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. There are a couple of different options. One is we could go ahead, since there's no one here and they couldn't walk in the building and didn't, we could go ahead with the public hearing, make a recommendation to City Council, and let the council know that the public was not available, didn't have access through Zoom for the meeting. and they could hold a second public hearing. Or we could just use it as a discussion item, as you said, and come back for the public hearing in August. I don't know if it's time sensitive.
I don't think that we have an issue as far as timing. So either way the commission decides to go, I think we'd be fine with.
To err on the, to be more cautious about it, I would suggest that we hold the public hearing next month. We're getting a thumbs up from Joe on that. Are there any other thumbs up on it or down? Okay. So with that, we will go ahead and hold the discussion on the matter so that if there's any adjustments we would like to see, we can do that, and then those can be incorporated into the public hearing for next month. And I see that our chair has joined us, so I will be happy to turn the meeting over to Annette. We were just going to open the public hearing since the public has not had our Zoom link was inaccurate on the packet, and so the public didn't have an opportunity to join us on Zoom. So I think you heard, Annette, that we decided to hold that next month, but to go ahead and hold the discussion. So that's where we would be at this point, would be to have a discussion on the proposed revision.
Okay, so because I didn't have a link to this, so real quick, why can't they hear? Something with Zoom, is that it?
So the link on the packet was expired and it wasn't the same as the one that was sent out individually to all the panelists here.
Okay.
So all the panelists got an accurate Zoom link, and that's why they're here now. However, the one that is accessed from the public was incorrect because it was a old link.
Okay, so we don't have our own Zoom logins tonight, like in the past?
No, you do. You do.
Oh, okay. All right. So we are on, so we're just gonna, are we on number 5? Is that where we are?
Yes.
Okay, so we're just gonna open it up for us just as a discussion.
Correct.
Okay, so business item A, instead of the public hearing, we're going to talk about POMC 20-68 accessory dwelling units and POMC 20.38.235 MVOD detached accessory dwelling units. And who is going to speak on it?
I gave the presentation earlier, and it's essentially what this revision would do is remove any owner occupancy requirements from 20.68. It would also delete or repeal that section in the McCormick Village Overlay District, which refers to it's an exception to an owner occupancy requirement for ADUs in the McCormick Village Overlay. And that's essentially it. That's a very narrow look at this issue.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. So now we're going to discuss, the planning commission is going to discuss it. Is that where we are? Okay, thank you. Anybody have any comments? Beck?
I do. I have comments on it. And for the benefit of the rest of the planning commissioners, I did have many questions, just seeking clarification and making sure I understood what was being said here. And I did have a conversation with Mr. Fisk today, and he answered most of my questions. I'm more than glad to review those with you. But as a result of that, I would draw your attention to it's 20.68.070, and it's the application procedures. And I would take your attention to number C. And my discussion with Mr. Fisk, if someone wants to have an ADU, there's an application process, there's a ADU permit that has to be obtained. And then if they're building or doing any construction, there are building permits and such. However, when we get to number C, it asks for an accessory dwelling unit agreement. And the agreement, I'm not sure who the agreement is with or exactly what the agreement is for. I didn't see anything in the agreement that couldn't be handled in the permit or the application. But what it does require is that the agreement be filed with the county and this become a record on the property's title. And I find that onerous. I'm not sure the reason for it. I could find nothing in the RCW. I researched the RCW. I researched the MSRC page on ADUs, and I could see no requirement that these ADUs have to be shown on a title report and that the agreement would have to be terminated under certain circumstances. It seems to me if you have an ADU and you're using it for its intended purpose, that's fine. But I think if you have an ADU and want to make an artist's lodge, a man cave or a she shed out of it, you should be able to do that without having to remove something from your title report and going through dissolving the agreement. So I wanted to bring that up for discussion. And my first question would be to Mr. Fisk to see if it's an important element of this for this code.
So the only reason why I think that you would have that agreement is to ensure the owner occupancy. If that language were repealed, there really isn't a need to put it on title. You're really not agreeing to anything. The only thing that agreement is intended to do is to ensure that the owner lives on premises. However, if that goes away, that agreement, you're not really agreeing to anything. So it's probably not necessary.
So I would ask the Planning Commission, my intent is if we were moving this forward tonight would be to make a motion to remove sections of that particular C subsection for the accessory dwelling unit agreement. And I bring that up for your discussion. Is there anyone who has comments on that? I guess I will rephrase that and I will say, would anyone have an objection to removing it from the proposed language?
Can I ask a bit of a naive question, Jim? For when an ADU is created, you know, additional square footage is added to the property. How is that recorded? Is that through the permitting process? And then there's an increase in value and there's going to be additional taxation?
By property, you mean the structure, not the land?
Yeah, right. So I build a building and I have more square footage and theoretically the city has an interest in more square footage.
When you file a building permit, it's issued and you construct it, that's all reported to the county and they assess your taxes based on that.
Okay, so
okay. Just one more thing about and I don't know if this matters to any of you. When looking into this, I reached out to the city of Bremerton. They once also had the owner occupancy issue. They repealed that a year or two ago. They also had that agreement language in their code. At the same time, they repealed that when they took out the owner occupancy. So that's really where that is coming from.
Works for me, for the record.
Part of my issue on it is, just quite frankly, is I don't know how, there are a lot of ADUs out now that we don't have information on, and how are we going to get agreements from all of those people? It seems onerous to me, And I can't, I think it could even be a hindrance to getting people to develop ADUs. Okay. Going on down, the other thing that I wanted to, and I don't know if this is the right place, or I had a little bit of concerns on the ADU that we allow, that we mentioned short-term rentals. It's number 7 under general requirements, short-term rentals. And I don't think that I have an issue with an ADU being a short-term rental. My question to Jim was, what is the process for establishing a short-term rental? And I was hoping to make sure that we had some sort of noticing to the neighbors if someone was going to use an ADU for a short-term rental. And Jim, is that something we would address here, or is that something that would be addressed somewhere else?
I think the short-term rental issue is not necessarily addressed through the ADU code, but rather in 20.39, which is our uses. In there, it talks about different lodging. I'm doing this from memory, so pardon me. There is the short-term rental, which is vacation, which is a daily rental, and then there's a bed and breakfast. That's what the ADU section is referencing, and that bed and breakfast is, for several days and up to like 7 bedrooms. So if you wanted to address short-term rentals, it would be more appropriate to do it separately through looking at 20.39.
So would it be appropriate to remove short-term rental here, or leave it in and just address the procedure somewhere else? Because this is just saying that short-term rentals are allowed in ADUs.
And I think, I should back up a little bit. We are in the process of developing a housing action plan, which we will intend to have adopted by next summer. I think a lot of the issues that are kind of surrounding this, other than the owner occupancy, will be addressed through that. And a lot of that will be identified, and then it'll give us actionable steps to take to further refine this portion of the code.
I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention that that was one of the issues that I had talked to Jim about. The other thing that I talked to Jim about is it's under bulk location and design requirements, and it's regarding the size. And it's number 3 under size, and it says for an attached ADU that is accessory to a detached residential dwelling, the ADU shall not exceed 40% of the total square footage of the residential dwelling and the ADU combined after modification or construction, or 1,000 square feet, whichever is greater. And I just wondered if we really meant whichever is greater, or did we mean whichever is less? Because with this, a 3,000 square foot house, you could put a 1,200 square foot ADU on it. And I don't care. I just wanted to make sure that that was the wording we were looking for.
So my response to that was, well, first, again, back to the housing action plan, I believe that those size limitations will likely go away.
Okay.
But I would also like to go back and look at, pardon me, the former Title 16 and make sure that that language is consistent. In theory, that language came directly over from 16 and there was no change to it. So at this time, I wouldn't feel comfortable answering that question.
One way or the other. So those were the things that I looked at, Annette, and wanted to bring to everyone's attention. The one that I felt required action was removing the agreement language. I thought that was, I thought it was a stronger document without that in it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Can I ask a quick question? So there are some people that I know that are remodeling house, and they're going to rent that out as a regular rental. And then the garage on the property, they're going to do as a vacation rental. Is that allowed now, or would that be allowed after this?
The answer is it depends. Without knowing the zoning, anything like that, what their intentions are, I couldn't answer it fully. But
Okay.
in theory, this, what you've described generally would fall into like an ADU situation.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Beck, did you have anything else that, because you brought up some good points.
Yeah, well, the other thing, Annette, when you mentioned your friends doing this, one of the things that came to my mind is the home directly to my south is a single family residence. It's an investment property. The folks bought it here 3 or 4 years ago. The previous owner lived in it, sometimes didn't, sometimes always rented out the basement. And now, so it's on all of the tax rolls as a single family residence. And they rent the upstairs and they rent the basement, and it's non-owner occupied. So that was my question, is does that now become an ADU? Is that basement an ADU in that building? And that's when I'm going, my God, how are we going to get agreements from all these people? Because we don't know where they all are and what really constitutes the ADU in those cases. Because I think we have a tendency to think of the ADU as a separate structure, and it doesn't have to be. It, you know, I mean, we think of it as someone building something on their lot or putting an addition onto their home, but it doesn't have to be. The home I'm talking about, they just put up a wall and now it's, you know, it's the same footprint. So anyway, so that's why one of the reasons I thought that the agreement should go away.
I kind of thought the ADUs too are meant just for like mother-in-law's home or something like that. So I guess, so they can be used as short-term rentals? Or is that gonna be part of the housing action plan?
Right now, as long as the property owner lives on the property, how they rent that ADU or the primary structure for that matter, because they can live in the ADU, the city is not in the business of regulating those short-term rentals.
Okay, thanks.
And I should just want to point out that when it comes to those agreements, the city is not out there actively looking for ADUs. When somebody applies to permit an ADU, that's when we apply those agreements.
Okay.
And in the new housing plan, the 40% and the 1,000 square feet is going to be irrelevant. I mean, those are going to disappear.
Well, I didn't say that. I said my feeling is that I believe that will be removed as part of that. That'll be likely one of those actionable steps. However, we're just starting that process, so we'll look to that in about a year.
Okay. That would automatically revise this document then.
Correct. There will be more revisions likely.
Okay.
Any more comments or questions or? Okay, so we'll have this as a public hearing in the August meeting. Oh, did you have something?
Well, do we want to suggest that when it returns for the public hearing that that subsection C is stricken related to the agreement so that the
I
public?
think when we re-advertise, that we will include that in the notice of hearing,
Okay.
so that it's very clear that it's not solely owner occupancy.
Okay. Yeah. Right, but we want the provision to get to the provision that requires an agreement. We want it out. So
Understood. Yes,
in your
we
next-
will.
Okay,
We
sorry.
will advertise the hearing appropriately.
I blame the Port Orchard fireworks for my inability to focus. Thank you. 3 hours and 52 minutes of sleep, not that I'm counting.
Okay, do you want to move on or do you want to continue with this? Okay, perfect. All right, so the next item for discussion is business item B, POMC 20.33.010, 20.34.010, 20.34.020, 20.34.030, 20.34.04, sorry, 0.40 and 20.34.050, 20.34.060 accessory structure setbacks. Jim, is this you also?
Yes, ma'am. So we wanted to introduce this item related to accessory structure setbacks. And just for simplicity, I appreciate you going through all of the code citations, but essentially it's two sections of code. It's 2033 and 2034. 2033 is the greenbelt zone. 2034 includes all of the residential zones, R1, residential 1 to R6. In those districts, the residential 1, 2, and 3, and R6, those all allow single-family detached houses. R3 also allows apartments. R4, R5 are pretty much just multifamily development. There's some other building types in 20.32, but for the most part, R1, R2, R3, and R6 are the only ones that allow detached houses. So the purpose of this is that some of those residential districts, they lack accessory structure setbacks. There is nothing that is defined there. And so on occasion, what will occur is somebody will try to permit an accessory structure, and we don't have any regulations to apply to it. So we end up applying the primary structure setbacks to it. You'll notice that in and I don't have the code in front of me, I really should. The R1, R2 districts, you'll see that the front setback from the primary street is 40 feet. That is intended to push those accessory structures, including, detached, backyard cottages, back away from the street and be behind the primary structure on the site. But then there's other districts that lack them entirely, the accessory structure setbacks. In general, they're 5 feet from interior property lines and 10 feet from the rear property line. That's the same as the primary structure. So the intent with this code revision is to provide a little bit more flexibility for those accessory structures, define what those standards are so that staff and the public can apply them appropriately. In some cases, you'll see in the revisions there, the proposed revisions, there is a significant reduction in the rear yard setback when an alley is present, and also in the side yard when the alley is present. Obviously, any of these structures would have to meet current building code, and so you'll see that there is a note added in each one of those that says fire separation will have to be complied with. So what could potentially happen is if somebody they had 2 adjacent lots and they abutted an open alley, an improved alley. With these new regulations, they could cite an accessory structure that actually straddles the common property line between them. And they'd fire rate that common wall, which would sit on that common property line, a 0 lot line, if you will, and access it from the alley. Our code allows for pretty narrow lots, and what we've discovered is that people cannot effectively place accessory structures in their rear yards without seeking some sort of relief. Currently, the relief allowed through a variance process wouldn't really allow them to get to that point. So these provide that flexibility. They place the accessory structures in an appropriate place, and it gives us something to apply when we're reviewing building permits, et cetera. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions for you. We just want you guys to take a look at this. We plan to advertise a public hearing on this for next month's planning commission, but wanted to get this in front of you and get some of your thoughts before we proceed.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I think my comment is, Jim probably already spoke to it, but it seems like a lot of the new construction have very small building lots. And I've been trying to figure out how they were going to put a usable ADU on them. And that's what you're trying to accomplish here.
It's not only the ADU, but it's detached garages, things like that. Something that our zoning code really, when we redid the zoning code and went to this form-based code, the lot sizes and lot widths, our intent was really to de-emphasize garages and push the primary structures toward the street to activate that streetscape. And what we've found in the last few years is that traditional builder, well, I don't want to say traditional, the home builders that we have locally are still, and developers are still platting lots without alley access. And so what that does is they have a minimum standard driveway width. So let's say they, from the public works standard, that has to be off an interior property line by 5 feet. And then they have the minimum width of the driveway. And we also limit the width of a garage based on the lot width of a lot. And so that driveway ends up eating up the whole front yard. And in some cases, because our lot widths are so narrow, we can't really even achieve on-street parking. So it's kind of defeating the purpose. So these accessory structure setbacks, one thing that we're hopeful is that it encourages the platting of more alleys. And then those garage standards, the driveway standards, those all just kind of go away because then we don't apply them when the garage is in the back. However, because the lots are so narrow, they can't effectively site a detached garage in the rear yard. And so this revision, what it does is allows them to maximize that 5-foot setback that's otherwise just kind of unusable space. That space between your fence and a garage that you really hate mowing. This just kind of pushes those together and it maximizes the use of that property. So a lot of benefits to it.
Any other questions, comments? All right. So that's it on the agenda. Is there anything else? I guess we're done then. Sorry I was late. Sorry that I was trying to start the meeting over again too. But anyway, hope you all have a great night. And tell me again, when is the next meeting? August? Do you have a date?
I believe it's the 2nd.
Yeah.
Okay. And one question, did you send those out on the city email or the invite or on our personal email?
I'm only able to send, so the way that panelists are set up, I have to put a name and an email, and I can't have the same name twice. So if you have an email preference that's not your city one, let me know, and I can get you the link to send that one instead. But I kind of default it because I.
Okay, because I think every other time I've seen it on my personal one, because I don't know how to log in to my city email. So
Okay.
that's probably where I messed up. So I apologize for that.
And again, I'm super sorry about the faulty link. I don't know.
You're fine. You're fine.
Accidents accidents happen, and I've got to admit, Annette, the reason I knew is because I can't log into my city email either. So, and I'll come clean, and I've gotten in touch with the IT person to reset my city password. But yeah,
Who is that person? I should call them too. Who is that?
my brain doesn't remember. Can you help?
Matt Brzezinda.
Who?
Matt Brzezinda.
Oh, I called the wrong person, so that's hilarious. Yes,
You
thank
probably
you.
called Steve Haber.
I did. Well, I called somebody. Yeah, I don't remember.
Okay.
Either one of them can help you.
Matt or Steve.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you for all the great work that you do, Jim and Josie.
Yeah.
And great job steering us through the waters, Beck, before Annette showed up.
Yes. Thank you, Beck. Have a nice night, you guys.
Night, everybody.
Bye, you guys.
If you have an email preference for a student, let me know, regardless of.
I'm gonna start behaving and using my city email. It's gonna happen. I'm changing everything. Bye, everybody. Bye.
All right. Good night.
Thank you.